When you're talking about aquaculture industry in India as such, I think please remember we are also competing with poultry, dairy. So where they follow this, even in the morning they are talking about three A's like affordability, accessibility, and uh, three A's actually. So if you look at aquaculture, the biggest affordability is there in Indian market, but the accessibility and availability are the bigger issues. So I think once we are able to solve those issues, I think the volumes, size of the industry will grow. So our experience is that now if you look at the meat industry in India, mostly it's all chilled, right? Mostly even the panelists who were speaking before me, they were talking about chilled markets. And or they were, or else for the markets which are away from the production, they're talking about frozen, mostly frozen. But then, if you what we are missing here, we are not talking about the refresh. So that's the biggest trend that's catching in Europe now. People freeze the product, then before selling to the consumer, they thaw it, they sell it as chilled. So they're calling it refresh. Until that catches up in Indian industry, Indian for aquaculture, it'll be a big boon actually. So I think most of the players here, I think he is there, Mr. Yogi Verma is here, he is much senior to me. What I feel, even for shrimp, even for fish, to actually grow the market, the two A's like accessibility and availability, if those have to go up, I think we have to follow the refresh model. Once we do that, I think the industry is in for a big jump. And to talk a little bit of what Growel is doing, now Growel has recently set up a JV company with one of the largest B2C companies in India, Alicious. We are started a new company with the same principle. We want to actually, this company just started for the domestic market and we are going to focus majorly on fish, not shrimp. Because we feel the markup from the farm, like if you look at the markup from the farm to the end consumer, it's very high. Like Dr. Manoj was talking, he was saying like the farm gate shrimp is being sold at 250, end consumer is buying at 2,500. That doesn't make sense. As long as there is that much markup between the producer and the consumer, I think we are going to struggle to increase the volume or make anything like Amul. That's my take on this.
Yes. Now I'll move on to Dr. Gupta. Sir, you have seen the tilapia movement in Southeast Asia. You were instrumental in making it as a popular species in Southeast Asia and help the rural poor at large to benefit from fish farming. Tilapia has started in India, but it has not taken up in India a big way. What could be the reason, sir? What were the bottlenecks? I mean, what is that we need to do to make tilapia as the species in India?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me on this tilapia issue. And going back to the previous session on creating awareness, right? I go back to 1986 when I moved from Thailand to Bangladesh. I saw nearly 500,000 seasonal ponds were lying fallow. Nothing was happening. It was covered with weeds. I asked, why is it that no fish country is going on? They said, we tried to put the carps, but they didn't grow because the water was turbid, they were shallow, and were seasonal in pond. Then I said there are other species. So one I thought was tilapia because it can reach the market size in 4 to 5 months or even 3 months. Because even 80 grams of tilapia was acceptable for the people there. So when I started introducing it to tilapia into about, there were 500,000, 500,000 ponds, but we selected about 10 villages and tried to do this one with the help of the NGOs. Then I got a problem from the government. The secretary called me and said, we have the carp here. Why are you promoting tilapia, which is an exotic fish and it could be a big pest? I said, we are not competing with the carps. We are looking at an additional species, diversification species, for a particular niche and also for the poor people, which can get protein at a small, cheaper price. Then what I did again, to convince this one, we were having a research station at Mymensingh, which is about 100 kilometers from Dhaka. It's a beautiful research station with a guest house. So all the secretaries used to come their weekends with their families to that station to stay in the guest house and enjoy the farm and the fish. I told the cook, don't prepare any cars. From now onwards, it should be only tilapia. And the cook developed his own recipe for tilapia, not unlike carbs. And everyone was, liked that preparation of tilapia so much, and they started promoting from there.
Maybe we have to come up with nice recipe in India to promote it.
I'm sure. I mean, each species has a different way of preparation of that species on that one. So from there, it became a poor man's fish. And also, I tell you, when we started at the WorldFish Center, at that time it is Islam, when we were starting the genetic program, people were commenting, it is a dirty fish, it's a poor man's fish. Why an international organization is working on genetics of aquaculture? Now you see the tilapia, the second largest exported fish after salmon or shrimp. And it's catering not only to poor people, but also the elite community. So this is where we have to look at then. Now, coming to India, okay, the problem with India, I know there were so many committees formed by the government of India, but no decision has been taken whether you encourage the culture or prohibit that one. The reason was that we have the other species, tilapia mozambicus, which is probably introduced by UNICEF way back in 1950s, which became a pest in all the ponds and the tanks. But we were talking at my suggestion was, okay, we already have a tilapia mozambicus species, which is not growing well because it breeds very fast. So we already have a tilapia. So introducing Nile tilapia, a gift one, there's nothing wrong in that. And it is, we are talking about a monosex culture, where the possibility of extending to different water bodies will be less. But it took, sir, 4 decades for the fight, and finally through when Dr. Krishnaya was at NFDB, we forced whether the ministry should take a decision, whether say yes or no. Sir, with respect to Sridhar sir, we take the decision, we take a very bureaucracy, probably very long time. Same thing with the Pangasius. What happened to the Pangasius? Pangasius was taken, decision was taken by the government when already farmers have grown to 600,000 tons. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Now we have the Paku. We are not a decision taken even now, whether we should go for that or not. So we have to look for other venues, right? We have to cater to the different people, different states. Now coming to that side, we were talking of the diversification and all those things, which we have been hearing that topic for last 3 to 4 decades. But what diversification has happened? If you look at the freshwater aquaculture, we are talking about the increasing the export. What are the 2 species that are amenable to fillet? Is Pangasius and tilapia, okay? And Pangasius that we are growing now, we have the problems in coming with the fillets of an international standard. So again, here there is a forum, I am raising this issue. Probably the Pangasius that we are growing is not a species what the Vietnamese are growing and exporting. Why not we bring those species into India and grow them and develop an export market for that? So again, I think this is something that we have to look at. We are not proactive. As somebody said, we are reactive, as Sridhar Sahab always says that.
Tilapia Pangasius was reactive.
So
Right,
this
thank
is
you
something,
very much.
sir.
Thank you.
I would now move on to Mr. Chandrasekhar. No. Mr. What,
I am the last
I mean, what kind of inefficiencies you see in the sector, be it fish or shrimp?
What happened is that when we migrated from the loss of production through black tiger disease problem, we move on to Vanamai, but we lost the fundamental interest in other species. So we limited ourselves only to Vanamai. We put everything in a single basket. Now when we are unable to continue to cope up with the diseases, we are now stranded. So what we look into that is, one thing is that system diversification, species diversification is one mandatory thing which we need to add into our portfolios of shrimp farming. The same applies to the fish also. And second thing is that adoption of new technologies. I think if you compare the technologies adopted in countries like Vietnam and Thailand, because those are the 2 countries which were badly hit after the problem of EMS, because they were leading producers of shrimp with 600, 700,000 tons of shrimp. And after the EMS, the production came down to 150,000 tons. They did something with the screening of pathogen and introduced SPF, but they also modified the farming technologies. Like we talk about the multi-phase farming, which is primarily a successful venture for the countries like Vietnam and Thailand. Maybe like we need to go in for 3 stages of farming or 2 stages of farming for shrimp, wherein we can definitely come out of our current problems, because we have 2 issues. One thing is the production, where because our productivity is quite low compared to other countries. Second thing is about the market. So we have to take a multi-pronged holistic approach to overcome our things with the shrimp. As far as the fish is concerned, like in Fish India, the first point most of the participants were venting out was the market. Like, they don't get the sufficient prices and it is seasonal. 95% of our production is restricted to the carbs. And we have only limited pangasius and tilapia. Maybe there we need to incorporate certain changes, or we have to go for the system diversification. Like good example is again Vietnam and Bangladesh, wherein they go for certain intensive fish farming technologies, where they could maintain a good production and productivity. At the same time, they could maintain the good quality of the produce. Maybe the second part could be the adoption of technologies.
Thank you. Sir, now over to you, sir.
Government is not about change. Government is only about continuity. So how can government do things differently? I'm sorry, I will not be able to answer the question. To some extent, I gave my views in the last sector. You see, fisheries and aquaculture is such a complex sector that all the government needs to do is engage with the stakeholders in a very proactive way. And that is something which I find is missing. Now, I don't want to, it's a bad habit to keep blowing your own trumpet. But after retirement, whenever I have been participating in many of the events, I don't find any presence of the government. We are discussing all these things here, what government can do different. We can be very happy about having, expressed certain pearls of wisdom. At the end of the day, nobody would be wiser. So I don't really know.